This podcast is brought to you by MHA of Dutchess County and produced by CMJW Entertainment. This episode of the Vital Women podcast is proudly sponsored by Salt Boutique Labs. You're listening to the Vital Women podcast.
Welcome to the Vital Women podcast. I am your host, Yvette O'Sullivan. Today's episode, we are diving deep into what it actually takes to heal in a modern toxic world. We aren't just talking about covering up symptoms. We're talking about changing our internal environment so your body can do what it was designed to do, repair itself. So we have Lisa D'Alessandro, our holistic nutritional gut and cellular health practitioner, brings 30 years of wisdom to the table to help us understand why we feel stuck and how to finally filter the water of our inner bodies.
Beautiful.
Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you for having me, Yvette. Appreciate this opportunity to create more awareness out there.
Well, I'm very excited that you are here because not too long ago I had a guest and she was talking about the toxins in our water and how the government puts different chemicals in the water, and sometimes those chemicals are not the best for our body.
They're not. No, they're not. And they're in more than the water. It's the air we breathe, the foods we consume, the products that we slather on our skin and clean with. It's everywhere and inevitably, doing so much damage internally to our bodies. It's just coming in at such overwhelming amounts that we're exposed to on a daily basis that our bodies just don't have. It's set up with checks and balances in our body to take care of it, but the liver is basically so overburdened and overwhelmed. And what it does is when it can't filter out the excess amount of toxins, and we're talking maybe 200s of chemicals on a daily basis that we're breathing in and overly exposed to. And it's just can't filter out. So it tries to protect us. And then it's putting those toxins back into, sending them out away from our organs, back into our fat cells, our brain, bones, tissues. And that just kind of gets the body into a really sluggish state. It really tanks our energy. It, depletes our lymphatic and all the other systems that are meant to clean up the burden. So we have a toxic lymphatic system. It's very stagnant. Our kidney function gets overwhelmed, the colon, the skin, the lungs, all of those systems put in place to kind of release and let go of all the, unnecessary compounds.
I often think that people are living longer today, but with so many toxins around us, I often wonder, well, how are we doing that? But you are right. We see a lot of people functioning like with exhaust fumes and pushing themselves, especially women. We have so many responsibilities that it becomes difficult to pull that energy out of places. So where do we begin, and how do we begin to cleanse our body, cleanse our blood, cleanse our lymph nodes, cleanse our gut?
Right. So that's a great question. And taking down that toxic burden is absolutely first and foremost. And I always kind of use a couple of comparisons. You wouldn't build a house in a landfill with termites in the wall and mold in the attic. And even though our gut is that pretty much ground zero for everything going on, it is about taking down the burden. So being aware of a lot of the chemical exposure that we have, especially as women, we do, like you said, try to juggle it all, believe we can do in this era, and we can, but we are, not realizing that everything that we take in, whether it's from environmental exposure to toxins, chronic stress, emotionally, personally, physically, and that metabolic strain catches up and our cells are just screaming cell danger response, that's in that survival mode. And our immune and nervous system do take precedence over our well-being. It's like a great surveillance system that we have where they do send out chemical messengers, the cytokines, the neurotransmitters, the hormones that kind of run the show within. And if we're really not taking down the toxic burden and really looking at regulating our nervous system, and anything that we do has to be done consistently. So it is really managing stress on a daily basis. So whether we start with some deep breathing, some meditation, we have to be in that calm, peaceful place for healing to begin and for our body to recognize a lot of what happens is a lot of when body perceives danger and threat, it's in that hyperactive response mode.
Mhm.
So it's not calm enough to heal, and all of the our growth and repair slows down. Our blood gets dirtier, more heavy. There's a heavier burden on that. So it depletes our nutrients. It creates more inflammation within the body. So it's kind of a vicious cycle and loop. Instead, we need to kind of really look at the lymphatic system a lot, open up the liver and support that overburdened, unsupported organ. Make sure that if we're dealing with digestive issues, that we're pooping daily, and that it is, some people experience IBS, constipation from stress itself. So it really is just a matter of figuring out, again, going back to, if we take more of the toxic burden out of the picture. And, I've worked with people in lots of, changing their foods to eat less inflammatory foods. And the hardest part was always getting them to detox. And I've done 7-day liver cleanses and food cleanses, and I've had infrared saunas in my practice, and ionic foot baths. I myself have done castor oil packs,
Yes.
liver and gallbladder flushes. I've done coffee enemas, but it's what we do consistently on a daily basis that really can move the needle in anything we do in life.
So the liver being our natural filters in our bodies, and that's exactly what it's supposed to do, is cleanse our body from toxins. And speaking about all the different forms that you have tried to detox, how can we continue to support the liver and help it cleanse itself? Because you hear a lot on the news, you don't need to do anything. The liver is supposed to do it naturally.
Right.
But that is not the case. A lot of the times the liver needs that support.
It does.
Because there are a lot of invisible hidden toxins in the air, in the water, in products that we use, as you mentioned. So how do we give it that support?
So it's a complicated thing, and really working with someone in the field and being able to have a better idea of health history, what they're doing. But those detox pathways need sulfur. They need a lot of either methylated B vitamins, because most people are even born, 60% of people have what we call methylation issues, where they have a methylated gene expression. And that messes with it. It's a harder struggle on the liver detox pathways to flush out the toxins. So there's a couple of different ways we can go about it, with more sulfur-rich foods, and methylated B vitamins, which are in their natural source to help those detox pathways. I use another product that helps with hormone and liver support, that turns the different phases of liver support from turning fat solubles into water solubles to help filter out. We do need natural herbs too, like NAC or milk thistle. NAC is one of those things that is a precursor for glutathione, or master antioxidant.
I've done the milk thistle, but tell me more, being women of midlife and having some hormone challenges.
Right.
I don't like to call them hormone imbalance, because it's very difficult to balance the hormones. They fluctuate on a daily basis.
Yes.
And therefore, that's why I call them hormone challenges. How can we support those challenges so that way we don't feel stuck and feel energized?
Right. So it's a few answers to that question. Our hormones take hierarchy. So basically, our stress hormones, and which is cortisol, and our blood sugar and insulin, take precedence over our metabolic and sex hormones. So again, it comes down to managing the stress. It comes down to managing one's blood sugar, and most people are, especially women, they're skipping meals. They're not balanced with their macronutrients, healthy proteins, fats, and good fiber and stuff like that. But we're Americans that eat a lot of refined carbs. And then it goes back to, we're also Americans where our grains have been sprayed with glyphosates. There's so many pesticides, preservative additives into our foods, that most people are walking around with leaky, dysbiotic guts, meaning that we have we have so many, these toxic inflammatory foods and elements are just punching holes in our gut walls. So it actually causes more an inflammatory response. So the more that we cannot have healthy hormone levels unless we're really working on our diets, getting away from some of the processed food, eating cleaner whole food products, and working on healing that gut. Because a lot of these heavy metals and toxic exposures are also the cause of the bad bacteria, the yeast, the mold, the candida, the mucus and parasites that are thriving in that acidic environment from the foods that we eat and the exposure that we're getting to this toxic load. And that is what is causing, again, an imbalance of hormones. And we can't have healthy hormones if we don't have a healthy gut and liver. So it is working with the systems. And that's why I believe taking down the toxic burden from the body and working with that on different levels is the first thing that we should be concentrating on, and then opening up those sluggish lymphatic pathways.
How do we do that? How do we open up those lymphatic pathways?
Right. So the lymphatic system is a superficial system that's set up that kind of takes out all the cellular waste. It's basically a part of our immune system where we're supposed to take out the toxic waste and cellular waste. But it's like a tailpipe that if it gets clogged, everything is backing up. It works on subtle movements. So a lot of lymphatic movements we have to activate through our lymph nodes. So it's opening up certain lymph nodes and getting dry brushing is one of those ways. Epsom salt baths are one of those ways. Hot cold showers are another way. Lymphatic massage is one of those ways. But it's basically certain movements that we can do. I get up every morning and I have a ritual where after sleeping, everything is kind of slow and sluggish, and I get up and I open up those pathways, and it basically drains from head down. So it is opening up a lot of the lymphatic pathways to get things flushing. We have a lymphatic pathway from our brain, and that's why sleeping is so important, because we want to detox, our brains. And so everything becomes, a little bit of a pillar on what we can do to help the lymphatic system.
Tell me a little bit about your experience. I know that when we have talked, you have shared how you were exposed to mold and how you brought your body to a certain place of healing because you were affected by that exposure.
Yes. Yes. So mold toxicity is something like genetic toxicity. We're all born with a toxic load these days, and not everybody responds to mold in the same way. It depends on what's going on in the inner terrain of our body. So when I had this mold exposure, I had a healthier body that was in more balance. So it affected again, I noticed my mental cognition was tanking again. I had so much inflammation in my eyes. I had a virus. My ears started ringing, which I had never had before. And I've, through my practice and where I found myself through my own healing journeys and how I've exposed myself to amazing wellness tools and cutting edge products, I was fortunate to come across a zeolite. I had a friend saying, you've got to check out the zeolite. And I kept saying, I know zeolite. And for anybody who doesn't know zeolite.
Yes, please. I'm very curious about the zeolites, and tell us more about it, what it is, and how do we work with that?
Right. So zeolite is actually when volcanic ash and seawater come together, it creates an amazing mineral that has like a cage-like structure. They had found it used to be, it's when you mine it, it's in like a powdered form. And I guess when they had bombed Hiroshima, they had used this in grains and breads to help feed the produce to not only the animals, but the people, to take out some of the nuclear fallout. So the zeolite had been studied by so many, and Dr. Rick Deitch, who is now the category creator of an amazing connuptiolite zeolite, had been studying them for so long and had noticed that when they're mining the zeolites, that it even was attracting the exhaust fumes from the diesel engines, because it's a small negatively charged particle that does attract heavy positively charged, heavy metals, rocks, environmental pollutants, and all of that right inside of it, and it kind of cages it up. So he's uniquely micronized it, meaning he's made it smaller in size into a liquid state. And then he's activated it in his own patented 34-step process of electromagnetically spinning it and cleaning it up. So it's a really perfect liquid zeolite that we can actually just put into our mouth, and it goes through our circulatory blood system and lymphatic system within takes about 4 or 5 hours to go through the whole body, and we simply excrete it out, where it's not putting more burden on the liver, it's actually taking off the burden on the liver, and it's pulling from our cells and tissues as it's going through the body those heavy metals, those pollutants, and it can take down that toxic load. So what I had noticed, I was doing a gut cleanse at the time, so I was not on any caffeine, and within a couple of days, I noticed the energy that I had. So it does help with energy and the mental clarity. So within a couple months of doing that, and I was taking a nanosilver, which is another single mineral that's kind of designed the same way, that is safe to take, and that takes out a lot of the live things from our system. So it works on the live viruses, pathogens, bacteria, viruses in our system. So
it's so interesting because many of us are familiar with vitamins, but I don't think we often think about certain minerals that we need in our bodies to help us cleanse, to help the liver do its job more efficiently.
And that's it. Our cells need it today because what your former person was talking about, not only is our water toxic, but it's very stagnant of minerals now because it has been so chemically treated and chlorinated. They're coming in plastic bottles. So our cells need like a structured water. And by that, meaning that it's kind of water that maybe was once going down through the glacials and is spun in vortex, and it picks up the minerals as it's going over the rocks and all of that to contain the minerals that our bodies and cells need. So toxins also play, and inflammation plays a very important, role in our health, where it's actually it compromises the cell receptor sites from a lot of nutrients and oxygens going in and out of our cells to get cleaner, healthier cells. So that's where people are noticing all this energy slump and the fatigue, because inside that cell is our mitochondria, those little energy batteries that give us energy. And if that's not being flushed properly and getting the minerals we need. So a lot of people experience, like myself, I had osteopenia in my early 30s. And for me, I had a little familiarity. We learn as we go. But I really thought it was gluten, an issue that I had being when I noticed I was gluten intolerant, and not that it was, or an acidic body, but I didn't realize it was so much to do with, that those toxins are not allowing the calcium, the phosphorus, and boron to go into our bones and tissue to be taken up.
Yes, to absorb, so we don't suffer from osteoporosis, osteopenia.
Exactly.
Interesting.
So when the body is cleaner, healthier, and less stressed, it can fix itself. And that's the same with the zeolite. With this company, we don't make any medical claims, but a cleaner, healthier, less stressed body can start to come back into better balance. We have been tipped so out of balance by this fast-paced, toxic world in which we live, and especially women metabolically. We think we can handle it all.
Absolutely. Is that how you brought your body back into balance and to cleanse yourself from the mold exposure by taking in the zeolites?
Right. So yes, I've gone through, again, lots of different transformations in my healing journey, but it was using the zeolite, the nanosilver, and I also used this immunity mushroom. And this mushroom actually, I call it 1, 2, 3 punch. The mushroom is synergistically grown together with 7 different mushrooms. And those are like beta glucans, or they're more like the Genghis Khan of our immune system, where it gives us the immune system that Goldilocks effect. Because most people, when they have leaky, dysbiotic guts, go down into the autoimmune rabbit hole and one disorder after another. And we notice that, we have mental health issues, we have hormonal imbalances, the chronic fatigue, and we get into that sluggish state and lots of anxiousness, and that's a hyperactive immune response. So the mushrooms act to kind of bring our immune and nervous system that runs the show within the body back into a better state of balance. So you're supporting the immune, the gut, the brain, liver, all of that, and it has a lot of saffron in it, or a different product as well, which does also support mood, focus, anxiousness as well. So that just gives the
And we need that as midlife women. We need to support our moods and our brain, that brain fog. Yes,
exactly. So yes,
So the mushrooms are more of a way to bring that balance back into our body.
it is. The way the zeolite actually works as well is it's great because it's changing the pH of our internal system as it goes through. And it's I say it's taking out all the bad stuff. It makes room for the good stuff, but it's also not taking out a lot of the good necessary minerals our body needs. It actually dumps them back into our body. So that is giving us some vital energy and all of that what we need. And it doesn't create what we call a Herxheimer reaction, where a lot of people who go through detoxing, and a lot of times it's just simply dehydration, because toxins cause that dehydrated feeling and state, that we need to hydrate a little bit more. We can get, more fatigued, or we might notice more brain fog and those flu-like symptoms. So we really, don't get too much of that. But this immunity also helps bring that back to a better place of balance. So we don't, again, feel, too far, compromised when we do the zeolite as well. And I always suggest that for anybody who has any autoimmune mental health issues, especially to, give our system, our bodies are so depleted of minerals and nutrients. We have to nourish and nurture the body more. So the more that we can introduce lots of God's medicine that he gave us, we are just in need of what our bodies require, of natural sunlight, of the minerals, of good, wholesome, whole foods that aren't sprayed with pesticides, the glyphosates, but again, even organics are sprayed with heavy metals that we know. So it's a relentless cycle, but the more that we can give our bodies that nourishment, that sleep, the rest, ground into Mother Nature and all of that, it helps, give our bodies and raise that frequency up that our bodies need to thrive. When we take out the bad stuff, including infections and pathogens and stuff like that, when we can, kill them off and create more harmony within. That's how we, stay in that better state of balance. So if we do get exposed to a virus or something, we might feel it a little bit, might express it with a symptom. You might notice, sneezing or coughing a little bit, but our body's able to bounce back and fight it off the way it was designed to do. And that's when your body's in that better state of, balance and harmony.
Thank you, Lisa. And it's so important to know how to cleanse and detox correctly, because I've known some people that they've tried, but they end up making themselves more exhausted or ill because they're triggering other, dormant diseases that may be laying in their bodies if they're not using the correct products or following a certain method on how to cleanse themselves.
Exactly. So during that time, we have to make sure that all the detox pathways are open, that, you're going to the bathroom on a regular, consistent basis, that your lymphatic system is working properly. So we want to have all those channels open, that we're doing that deep breathing and de-stressing the body as much as possible so we can support it. And it is true, a lot of people hear, oh, I have parasites. And yes, I do believe there's 3 main reasons why we fall into chronic disease, and that has to do with toxins, infections or pathogens, and emotional trauma. And if we're not really taking down the heavy metals that these parasites and infections are thriving on first and foremost, and start off doing a parasite cleanse, you're going to feel worse, or they're going to come back, because they're giving off their own mycotoxins, and they're just going, every bacteria, every living thing has the survival mode mechanism built in to it. So yes, we're all born with viruses and, cancer cells and all these other, bacteria. I mean, we are more bacteria than human cells. And yes, it can survive in harmony and keep us in a good state. But once they start again to thrive in the wrong way, and we do not, take down a lot of the heavy metals and parasites in the right way, it can backfire.
The notion of parasites living inside me is kind of scary. And I remember a show years ago that it was called What's Living Inside You, something to that sense.
Okay.
And it was very popular on TV, and just seeing the, how they function and they live in your body.
Right.
I was like, I don't want to know, and for a long time, I, kept my head buried in the ground, not knowing. And to me, that is the worst, not knowing information, and it brings that fear.
Right.
And sometimes we think we're protecting ourselves.
They say ignorance is bliss.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But now I believe more in educating yourself. And education gives you that power to know how to deal with certain things.
Exactly.
So I am just so fascinated by the work that you do. And that's why I wanted to have you on the show, because I wanted to share this information with my listeners. So on that note, how do we continue to protect ourselves from being exposed to certain dangers?
Right.
You spoke about the 1, 2, 3 punch. Can you tell me more about that? Because I really don't understand what that means.
So I've mentioned the 1, 2, 3 punch in some of my presentations when I am talking about the zeolite. And the zeolite is the one thing that can change everything. I have, again, worked with so many amazing, tools, frequencies, and healing devices. I mean, I started even red light therapy 18 years ago when nobody knew what red light therapy was. And when I found and learned more about the zeolite and, what a blessing this is to have in our lives today, because it's basically one simple mineral that's been cleaned up and perfected, and using advanced science technologies cleaned up in such a way that it is so safe, even for children to take, anybody of any age.
So how do we put more into our body, more zeolites into our bodies? What can we do?
Right. It's basically working through someone like myself who has access to the company and stuff like that, to learn more about it. I'm always doing talks and presentations on the zeolite itself. I can put anybody into contact with presentations and learn more. Dr. Rick has lots of videos out there. We have clinical studies, 15 clinical studies, how it's antiviral, anti-inflammatory. It can be used with just about any kind of medication except platinum chemotherapy. It has to be done at different times with it. But there's lots of information out there that...
and it's a liquid form.
It's in a liquid form. So you simply start by taking drops into your mouth. You can add it to water if you want to be counting. And depending on, we have a reset program where we know it's been studied where we can take 10 drops in the morning and 10 at night without most people noticing any kind of, and this is for an adult, Herxheimer kind of reaction to it. But we like to try to increase that through the day because it does work through your circulatory and lymphatic system every 4 to 5 hours. So the more that we're putting in, the more we're taking out. And if we can do like a 90-day cleanse that way, the 1-2 punch was also introducing the nano silver to start taking that as well, because that's going to help with pathogens and parasites on a low level. I can work with people to up that as they go if they really want to do a real good parasitic cleanse, because it wasn't until the 3rd month that I started taking it, and I started taking with one of our Fiber Plus products as well. And I've done lots of parasite cleanses as well in the past using different products. And I always tell my clients, well, sometimes you just don't see everything. You don't have to be looking. And I really had never noticed anything. So there's a little bit about, was I doing enough heavy metal cleansing prior to get enough out? Because most heavy metal cleanses all work through the gut only. So they weren't going to help flush all of our cells as much as you really needed to be flushing our cells, no matter how much green drinks you could be drinking and all of that. And it wasn't until I got to that 3rd month and I introduced our Plus Balance for the liver health that I noticed I passed liver flukes and biofilms. Biofilms are pretty much clusters of parasitic colonies that they do to protect themselves. That's why a lot of blood work won't recognize that you have parasites and different things like that.
That's a good point. Yes. Tell me, how come this isn't picked up in our blood when we go for blood work? How do they hide themselves in our system that by having a blood work examination, it's not, indicated?
Right. So they do form these colonies. They do get into our bile ducts or, pancreas, liver, brains. They're all around in
They
our
hide. They
system.
have ways of hiding.
They have ways of hiding. And your blood is, a blood test is telling you what's going on within that hour of the body. It's what's happening in your bloodstream. So you might not notice, they're not picking up on enough the blood work that they can do. I'm not sure. But it really doesn't give you an ideal, I spoke to a GI doctor, and of course they say, it's mostly third world countries, it's not unless you've done some traveling or something, you haven't picked up parasites and stuff like that.
That's exactly what they say all the time. Yes.
Right. And I've had my clients also, I'm seeing it in, their scans, knowing it, and they're telling me, my doctors, I've been tested. I had a gentleman, he was so super thin, losing weight, and he was believing he had parasites, but doctors were telling him otherwise. And I'm like, they don't do the stool samples that they need to do. They're really not looking at the markers the same way, connecting the dots. It's it's what they've been taught compared to what we've been taught, where we look beyond the symptoms. The symptoms are just your way of your body signaling that it's been under some kind of cumulative stress, and that the body's requiring and asking for balance, where we're looking more at root causes. What's changed in your environment? What's gone on with your environment. And it goes back to, it's the toxic burden, the foods. I use the metaphor a lot, where a fishbowl without a fish tank and filter. So that too, we can't just keep looking and fixing the fish if we're not changing the water and the filter and all of that. That's keeping our bodies in a healthy state, and that's our inner terrain. And it's sad, because we do have a pulse, we do have parasites. There's lots of documentary out there. Dr. Hulda Clark, she wrote The Cure for All Diseases, and that happens to be parasites and toxins. She talks about that in her book. There's lots of information out there. We're passing them, they're there.
Thank you for that. We're coming to a close to our show, and would you like to leave our listeners with a call of action? What should we do if they're not interested in taking certain drops or cleansing their bodies? How can we move forward in coming up with certain suggestions that will provide us for better health and cleanse ourselves?
Right. So I go back to, I guess, look at, again, we're becoming more aware now of all the toxins that are in our foods. If you, get off the processed foods, look at your labels, whether it's food labels and, the additives, preservatives, whatever it is. If you can't pronunciate it, it probably doesn't, it's not organic in nature, and our bodies are organic in nature, and it's only going to synthesize anything natural. So ladies, look at your personal care products as well, because yes, we may be putting on makeup one day, but when we start putting it on every day and it's not clean, you can go to ewg.org and skin deep to rate your cosmetics. And being that they're either vegan or paraben free does not mean they're clean from other synthetic hormones. So it's about every bite, every sip, every prescription, every synthetic hormone contributes to that body burden, that inner toxicity. So start switching out, start purging your pantry, start switching out your cleaning products, your artificial fragrances, or cologne and perfumes. They're all endocrine disrupting hormone compounds that are all contributing to the toxic mess, the overburdened liver. Again, and then start changing your diets out. Look for more anti-inflammatory diets. Go grain-free. I mean, I learned about the gut-brain connection 20 some odd years ago when, my fourth son started being this head-banging baby boy. That's what drove me into learning about my own mental dementia that I thought I was going down, and the grains. Was it gluten or is the glyphosate? It's likely it's the glyphosate. And maybe we can switch up making sourdough breads, looking at our sources of grains and breads that we are, continuously eating. And, there's natural things. Take care of stress. Set your alarms on your phone so that maybe every 3 hours you're doing some deep cortisol breaths and calming the nervous system. Yeah, just to stop and, take some moments to breathe and let go and reset the nervous system, because you cannot heal if we're not taking care of the toxic load and if we're not calming the nervous system. So.
Thank you, Lisa. Is there a way for our listeners to get hold of you if they have further questions?
Yes. So at the moment, since I have shut down my brick and mortar, my website is down, but I can be
An email address or
you can email me at lisadwellness@gmail.com. And my phone number is my business, so I can be reached through phone contact and reaching out. Lisa D Wellness. I can follow me on Lisa D'Alessandro Wellness on Instagram, Facebook. So hopefully you can reach out through me those ways.
Well, thank you so much, Lisa, for being here today on The Vital Women. And for our listeners, stay steady, stay vital. Until next time.
This podcast is brought to you by MHA of Dutchess County and produced by CMJW Entertainment. This episode of the Vital Women podcast is proudly sponsored by Salt Boutique Labs,